Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you might be. I'm Eric Schumacher Rasmussen. I am the program chair of Streaming Media West Connect and the VP and editor-in-chief of Streaming Media. We were talking before we went live here about the last time we all met in person, and that was November of 2019 in Los Angeles. And this is our 6th virtual event. And before everyone, I have said, we'll see you in person next time. I'm not going to say that this time. I don't think I've actually jinxed it, but just in case, all I'll say is you can save the date for our Streaming Media East 2022, which will be in Boston beginning on May 24th, 2022. And if you go to streamingmedia.com/East, there's a little more information there. We will be opening up the call for speakers for that event soon, as well as a yet to be announced Streaming Media Connect that will happen in February. So keep your eyes peeled for more information about that. Before we jump into this panel, just a few housekeeping notes. If you have questions for any of our panelists, please enter them in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. We'll have the chat open, but we prefer that the questions go into the Q&A tab. That allows us to keep track of them more easily. If you have any other issues, though, and want to pop them in the chat, you can go ahead and do so. Also, live subtitles are turned on. If you are finding them distracting or don't need them, you can go to the bottom of your Zoom window, click on live transcript, and select disable transcript. I'd also like to mention that everyone here is registered for a random drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. We'll announce the winner of that at the end of the panel. I'd like to thank our diamond sponsors for all of Streaming Media West Connect, and that's Conviva, Limelight Networks, Signient, and Video Guys. And we have a brief video message from all of them right now. Bill, roll it.
Streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.
VideoGuys.com is your source for live production gear, and we can help you start streaming today.
Reach a wider audience and tell your story using equipment like the RGB Link Mini family of 4 HDMI mixers, YOLO Live YOLO Box all-in-one touchscreen mixers, streamers, and recorders, and PTZ cameras and controllers, perfect for productions of all sizes without a large production crew.
Go to VideoGuys.com or call us at 800-323-2325 for help and start streaming today.
I would also like to thank the sponsor of this panel, which is Digital Element. Thanks again for helping us make this possible. I'd like to welcome Rob Dillon, who will be moderating this discussion called Think Big, Program Small, the Importance of Localized Content. And Rob, I think Los Angeles, November 2019 was the last time I saw you in person.
I think it was you and Joel, and yeah, so ready for these things to start live again. But I'd like to welcome everybody here today to yet another Zoom call in your day. So a little different doing these virtual, but I am Rob Dillon. most of you probably have seen me at the other shows. I used to be the digital operations director for Tribune Broadcasting. Now I'm the head of product for a startup out of Omaha, Nebraska called Straight Arrow News, trying to prove that non-biased news does exist. And we're working our way towards that. I'm going to go around the panel and let everybody introduce themselves, starting with Kevin.
Hi there, I'm Kevin Dunaway. I'm the Vice President of Affiliate Relations and Content Development at Viewit. We are powered by SyncBack, who handle streaming for all CBS on the Paramount Plus platform, Hulu, regarding CW, and some others. My background is in television news. I worked in local station for 22 years before I came and worked for Viewit. We are a local free platform. We have 23 station groups on the platform and pushing towards 250 local stations committed to being on it. So it's a little bit about me.
Thank you. And let's go to Caroline.
Hello, it's a pleasure being here today. I am Caroline Harris, and I'm the Vice President of Digital Distribution for Gannett. Gannett is one of the largest local media organizations in our country. We own 260 local publications and a national publication that you probably all know. It's called USA Today. And I'm responsible for distributing all of our content off platform to digital platforms and audiences in new places. And I also run our streaming channels business, which includes USA Today News and USA Today Sports Wire. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Dana.
Hi, my name's Dana McLeod. I'm the Vice President of Content Acquisition for Evoca TV. Evoca is a next-gen broadcaster, and our set-top box is hybrid, so it can go between over-the-air, receiving over-the-air signals, and also streaming. So next-gen TV is really a great combination of broadcast and streaming technology. We're live in Boise, Idaho, Phoenix, Arizona, and Colorado Springs, with hopefully about 9 more markets to come before the end of 2022. So it's great to be here.
Thank you. Justin.
Happy to be here, everybody. I'm Justin Skogen. I lead enterprise sales here at Digital Element and have for the last 14 years. Thrilled to be here. Digital Element provides IP intelligence solutions as well as device intel and a number of different data points that help providers of all kinds, including streaming, OTT, and digital media, with the opportunity to protect, localize, and/or enhance user experiences.
All right, thanks. I think we've got a very unique panel, and I was mentioning this in our prep call last week, is a lot of times at the streaming media shows, you end up on panels where it's all pure play, and I've always been the token broadcaster, traditional broadcaster, but you see we have some people here with broadcast backgrounds who have since moved into OTT, and even somebody with a print background who is now working into digital. So we should get some pretty good, a broad slice of opinion and ideas on this. And we're going to start right off with the fact this, the topic is, local and local going into OTT and what's going on in that space. And the first question I had, why is this even a topic at Streaming Media West? Because there's hardware solutions, and I know a couple people on here have a hybrid solution, and I'll let them discuss that as well. But hardware solutions exist, and I know a lot of virtual MVPDs, you know what I meant, carry local channels as well. And one of the things we're starting to notice in that arena, and we've been talking about this for years, is they're getting more expensive than cable providers now. So, but there still are solutions. So, let's start with Kevin. Why is this even a problem?
Why is it a problem? I think it's an opportunity, actually, from the standpoint of where we're going. I think when you talk about, we are a free service. And so we are on, connected TVs and various other platforms. And we've seen viewership in the last year triple. And I think it's just the convenience and the ability to be places where you weren't traditionally before. And at the same time, the opportunity to do so many different things for local broadcasters in the space. I think that's the real. So I guess I wouldn't call it from our standpoint a problem. I think it's an opportunity. I think maybe somebody else could speak to it from the other standpoint, maybe.
Taking that, obviously, it is an opportunity. I always remember from a few years ago, it may have been in LA, one of our panelists said it's not streaming wars, it's a streaming opportunity. And I always believe that as well. But why is it so important for OTT providers to embrace a localized model when even some local broadcasters still don't believe in it?
Are you going back to me on that?
Anybody, sure.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
I can answer real quick, just from my perspective, and I don't want to take up all the time here. I just think that when we're in a very disruptive space at this point, and I think there's opportunities everywhere. And if we don't look to those opportunities, we can be left at home and no longer in the loop and relevant. And I think it's going back to localism from that standpoint is what is going to allow a local broadcaster to continue to expand into different silos. So that's what I say.
And kind of one of the things I was getting to there, I cut the cord several years ago, and I'm one of the people who actually got up on my roof and put up an antenna. But that's not always practical, obviously. So, Dana, you've got a hybrid model working, and how are you seeing that playing out?
Yeah, the hybrid is really unique, really made capable by Next Gen TV and ATSC 3.0. I know this is a streaming conference and not a broadcast conference, but that next generation of broadcast kind of gives you the best of streaming plus the best of broadcast. You can reach a broad part of the market, and then you can overlay all the benefits of streaming, like advanced advertising, better analytics. And so our system is a hybrid. And I think going back to your question about problem, opportunity, whatever, the vMVPDs, yeah, they carry the locals generally, and that gives them a flavor of local content, but they're not really leaning into the local communities. And I think part of it's that they have a nationwide service. It's the same service for the most part anywhere you are. Whereas there's a ton of opportunity, I think, to do more interesting things, and streaming is a great way to reach a lot of people. So like at Evoca, we carry, for example, a Basque channel. We launched in Boise, Idaho. There's the largest percentage of Basque speaking people outside of northern Spain in Idaho, which who knew? So that's like an opportunity to reach a subset of people that are just sort of left out of the current MVPD and vMVPD universe.
Okay. And I'm seeing something over the side here, and I didn't see it when I was researching you, but how are you guys supporting the new broadcast standards as well, the ATSC3, or is that outside of your realm?
No, that's exactly what we're doing. Yeah. ATSC 3.0. Yep.
Okay, excellent. I think this one's a good one for Caroline to start out, because you are, everybody knows Gannett as a print organization. And so, and we're aware you guys are moving, you skipped the broadcast, you got rid of Tegna and went straight into digital. I lost my question, pardon me. What are you thinking, and you are in all these local markets, are you just repurposing traditional local content, or are you guys trying to push the innovation a little?
Yeah, I think we're starting from a point of innovation, because as you pointed out, we're not traditionally a video organization. We had Tegna, we don't have Tegna now. So the video content that the locals were primarily producing before were for social media and article. So really short form content. But now that we've now leapfrogged, like I said, into the streaming space, we have 2 nationally distributed channels. It's given the locals an opportunity to have a national platform, just as they do with USA Today, but now in the streaming and linear living room space. So, so it's actually inspired our locals to get really creative about longer form programming. So specials, for instance, we had one called Boots on the Ground that came out of Minnesota, Minneapolis. And that was really the boots on the ground reporting about what was happening a year later after the George Floyd killing. And just as, we do philosophically think about our locals feeding into that kind of the national story, as they do for USA Today, local stories become of national interest. The same goes for streaming. So so we have these really hyper local stories that are relevant for everyone in the country to hear about. And so we've had like a California drought documentary and special or multi-part series that are coming out of these local divisions. So so we're just, we're thrilled that we have this new platform available for them to have their voices heard and reach totally new audiences in some ways with their investigative and enterprise reporting.
Excellent. Yeah, I think Justin, you've been left out, so I'm going to pick on you on one here. What, especially in your realm with the IP data and everything, what are some of the ways that what you provide or what we can all learn from to help us to even localize it even more?
It's a great question, Rob. Caroline kind of touched on a couple of things there, and I think a lot of what everybody looks at most often is national, right? You go to Fox News or you go to CNN or you go to USA Today, you're seeing, for all intents and purposes, a default page or a default bit of content or streaming that is nationalized. And I think the boots on the ground is a great example. We as well as partners of ours work very hard to provide data that allows for even a postal code level of granularity without any privacy type or regulatory type restrictions. We're not collecting any PII. So it gives a great opportunity for those landing areas, those providers, those distributors to say, to localize that both on screen and or through any type of advertising that might be included in any of that. So it gives a great, we offer it's not Justin, it's not Rob, it's not Dana, it's not Kevin opportunity to target whatever it is you might have, whether that be Minnesota or the Midwest, Northern California, or Southern California for that matter, all of California for the drought stuff. The average person might not hit USA Today and be a national viewer of USA Today content, but somebody in Nevada or Idaho might really enjoy the multi-part series on the California drought. It does affect their region. So we offer the opportunity behind the scenes as a complementary enhancement to localize that with data.
Excellent. And now, instead of just picking on individuals, we'll open up some questions to everybody. Just jump in if you have an opinion. If not, well, I'll tell Eric to do it. I don't know. But so, and this was almost kind of a two-part question, but and it's been touched on, but what new opportunities does the OTT space give to local distributors and creators and even local broadcasters? As we mentioned, there's still friction in the local broadcast space to adopt this model, which opens it up for creators and pure digital plays. But what opportunities are you seeing on a daily basis? Anybody just jump in.
From our standpoint, we're seeing a lot of different local events that you couldn't put on a local broadcast station because it would air during prime time, and that's owned by the network. So in the past year, we've done nearly 600 local events and a lot of that's local sports. We talk about local sports, hyperlocal sports, high school sports, local events that we speak of, anything of relevance. But the unique thing that I find is we're getting viewership, not just in the local environment, across the country. When you just, Justin, you were just speaking to that. We have run the Iditarod. It ran in 100, it was done by a station in Alaska, ran in 178 DMAs because viewers were interested. Anytime there's weather on the platform anywhere, we see a spike in viewership, not locally, across the country to those stations. So I think that, from a local broadcaster standpoint, in my, my previous career, it's taking local national, and you never had that opportunity before now. And it's a game changer, in my opinion.
Just to comment on that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry,
go ahead,
Caroline.
Justin.
I was just going to say, I was actually just browsing. I got to admit, I was browsing Kevin's LinkedIn page here a minute ago, and to see Hyperlocal go national. Kevin's I'm going to share this, Kevin, sorry, but Central Michigan alum. And Monday Night Football last night, to talk about sports, taking Hyperlocal national, a Central Michigan backup quarterback was a hero last night in the NFL. And you kind of relate all of these things, and the opportunity for all these people on this panel and in this little industry in general to have the opportunity for those things to explode. And we all know what social media can do and the idea of going viral. But I think if you proactively look at some of these things, there's data, there are solutions, there's hardware, to Rob's early point during the introduction. There's all of this technology around us to take advantage of this at every level of regionality or localization. It's really kind of exciting, and it doesn't get more personal than, you know, Kevin's fellow alum being the Dallas Cowboy quarterback on Monday Night Football. Imagine the opportunity for Central Michigan now. The average sports fan probably doesn't know a whole lot about Central Michigan, but they're going to now.
And I was going to piggyback as well, because we actually, for the first time ever, aired our high school sports awards show on our channels. And actually that show was never broadcasted. It was only available streaming on either YouTube or local publication websites. And so this past August was the first time we were actually able to essentially put it on our channels. And it was the most watched show of all time for our channels. And that, you know, we had talents attached to it. We had Gronk and Michael Strahan. So of course people were interested in watching it, but we had much longer view times on that show than anything else. And that's, you know, awarding high school kids from all across the country who, you know, might not be known on a national level, these awards. So it's obviously something of national interest as well. But we have something like out of our indie division where it's like a Friday Night Lights streaming broadcast that we've only done on YouTube and Facebook so far. And it's kind of like a red zone where they switch between different high school games. And I'm just putting this out there. I would love to find a way to get that into the streaming world to audiences that would be interested in it, whether it's people in the Indianapolis area or people who are, you know, from the area that, you know, that still have interest in those high school sports. So yeah, putting that out there. Hopefully somebody will reach out to me and help me out.
And I can add, since even though I'm in Omaha now, my home is Indianapolis, I have seen that product, and I've also talked to a lot of people that have a great interest in it. So yeah, somebody distribute this already. And we kind of touched on this everything we're talking about, it seems like it's extremely niche down. And that's the promise of our industry. And it has been the promise for several years that we can finally, you know, the person who wants to watch the Iditarod can watch the Iditarod. There's someone in Maine who wants to watch Indianapolis high school football, you know, but is it financially viable? Because here, and I'll preface this with something I have said on every panel I've been on and moderated for the last 6 years. Eventually, the people who sign the checks are going to want to see a return. You know, they've given us, especially in the pure play arena, and to an extent, local broadcasters, we've been given a blank check to experiment and try things. But is there a financial incentive? Is there a financial return in this kind of model?
I believe there is. You know, we're writing decent sized checks to local broadcasters for being on the platform because of the ad sync technology and how quickly the ad site is growing, you know, and it's pretty fascinating on that. You know, I think one viewer in a niche environment is worth a lot, and I think there are some great opportunities from that aspect. So
anybody else?
I'd agree. There may be some stuff that's not financially viable, but the advertising is so much more valuable in an OTT world versus historically just selling against some high level estimate of eyeballs. And because you can really target to the individual viewer, it doesn't matter quite as much what they're watching. You can still get the ad to them. So yeah, I think it's viable, although at some point you may reach a breaking point and we just kind of have to experiment with what that is.
Yeah, and that was the curiosity, and the point of the question is, you know, obviously the Iditarod as an example, just because that's one of the greatest examples I've heard in a long time. But you know, is there a big enough demand? You said you're writing big checks, but is there a big enough demand for that to sustain? And obviously, you're seeing that it is.
yeah.
But you know, there's got to be an example where you eventually niche down too far, and you're broadcasting to 3 people, and no matter what you promised an advertiser in eyeballs, they're not going to pay, you know, 1 million CPM for 3 people. And so that was my curiosity. And it's been a challenge and a struggle, like I said, for all of us in the industry for a long time. And I know, Justin, your kind of data can help, probably isolate whether it makes sense to, niche out and broadcast, tiddlywinks or something like that.
It really can. It can both after the fact from an analytics perspective for testing. So, if Kevin wanted to do some kind of program that he says one viewership is important, he could actually take that information and he would know of let's say there were 16 viewers, he would know the physical location of those folks based on IP. And be able to make some of those decisions. Similarly, in Carolyn's really interesting note about the high school sports red zone type application, I wasn't aware of that. That's really interesting. I'm definitely a sports geek, so I'll check that out. But an opportunity like that, where somebody enters that stream and you already have their IP address, you could segment the red zone swap if that's technologically possible. And you could segment things to their region using our data. So there's a number of different things there. But the other one that I think gets lost in the localization piece is the delivery of content at optimal speed, right? Performance. If something skips, it doesn't matter who's providing it. A lot of us are going to drop off. That's a normal occurrence, especially now with expectations for immediate satisfaction. Our data can definitely help somebody ensure that they're hitting the right network center or whatever the case might be from a routing perspective.
And that's especially important in sports, as you brought up.
Absolutely.
But buffering it all in general is not a good thing. And made the joke in our prep call that it seems like every panel I've been on for the last 6 years was about latency and how to solve that issue. We're getting there. We're still not there perfect. I been doing some streaming of sports lately, and even the big players like DirecTV have problems at times. So, and we're talking on sports, and we've really touched on this, but let's go a little deeper from everybody's perspective. Obviously, Iditarod, high school sports. Is sports the driver for this market? Is that how it comes into play, or is there other things just as strong that you're seeing?
From our perspective, local content, whether it be sports or not, I think local events, we broadcast Edmund Fitzgerald. There was obviously a ship that sank. They did a memorial last year on November 10th. And we broadcasted to, I think, 132 markets. So good content, good local content. And actually, and it can be native too. It doesn't have to be the most perfect. I think people are looking for, sports is an easy driver, but localism, and different types of content are going to, get viewers both, locally and across the country. On average, a station on our platform, they do about 35 to 40% of their viewership is literally outside of their market. And that's an opportunity. You're getting eyeballs that you wouldn't normally get because they're not in your DMA. So I think localism is the key driver from my perspective, I believe.
What are you seeing, Dana?
Yeah, I think sports is a big driver, and there's a lot of sports that's local that doesn't get any airtime, or it doesn't get broadcast, it doesn't get picked up. But we've heard a lot of examples about other things, like the documentaries on the drought. We have some documentaries in our Idaho market about salmon and dams and how does that impact people. So there's a ton of content that's relevant to people where they live. I think Kevin's example is an interesting one. You can actually expand the market versus traditional broadcasters, which are kind of limited to their DMA. So sports is a great opportunity, but it's definitely not where the opportunity ends.
Okay. And I just chip in my 2 cents on this. I'm extremely familiar with Kevin's market just because when I was a Tribune, I had a local station there. And we would sit down with the GM and the news director there, and they'd tell me all the fantastic events that happens in your community. I'm going, okay, we could stream this, we could stream this, we could stream this. And so I love sports too, but there's other things that are just as interesting or just as fascinating to me. And to just finally add on, I'm advising a startup on doing hyperlocal news as well, because we mentioned there's some communities, fairly large communities, that have never had a local news source, and or only make the major metropolitan news when there's a murder or something, horrible happens. And so I'm advising, based off of my knowledge from my past life, on how we could do a startup. And the costs, obviously we don't have to go out and buy a broadcast tower or anything. We can pick up with someone like Dana or Kevin's companies and get pushed out there, and it's just as important. And then it gives the provider another market as well. And going into that, I want to, Dana, you'd made a mention in your summary of local content is where you're concentrating, while national distributors are running away from it. Why do you think national distributors are running away?
I think it's just easier for them to have one national product. They have their headquarters in New York or LA or somewhere, and it's just easier to have the same product. Yeah, they can pick up the local news, but I feel like that's about where their local element ends. And so that's where we see the opportunity, and that's how we're very regionally focused. We're in 3 markets now, but we're not trying to have a national product in the next few years. We really want to build up that community presence. We think that's what differentiates ourselves. And that's where there's a need. So that's our focus. And I think from the national side, it's just easier for them to have a single product for everybody and save time on their end. But we want to do the opposite of that.
All right, Caroline, any thoughts?
Yeah, Dean, it kind of goes to the earlier question about opportunity versus problem. I think that it's a missed opportunity by some of these platforms and services that are pure digital, and hopefully they're working on this, is to personalize their experiences, because audiences aren't myopic, right? There's tons of intersectionality among audiences that, I want my local high school sports in West Orange, New Jersey, but I also want to know what's happening on the national level, and I want to watch the kids get, the kids programming with my, and I want to watch movies. Like everyone is, there's so much variety out there, but what these, distributors and platforms can do is really create these like hyper localized streams, right? For everyone, and pull in, both the commoditized content like traffic and weather and the basic stuff that's happening, but also the more interesting, boots on the ground content. And then of course, going into election season, what's happening at the local level for elections, and how do you help people, and how do you create more of a utility for people at that point on, okay, I'm going to make a decision in the voting booth or whatever it is, replace voting with something else. You're helping people make decisions about their lives. Sometimes, that the information coming out of locals is the most critical to making those decisions. So how do you turn these services and these platforms that people are, shelling out a lot of money for, like you said, in some cases more than cable, and make it super valuable for people, super utility, very personalized. So I would love to see that. That's where, I'd love to partner, because we can't create tons of local streams out of our local divisions. It's just not what we do, but we have super valuable content that we know audiences want, because our readers love it. It just needs a home.
Any thoughts, Kevin?
No, I would completely agree with that statement. I think it just goes back to the localism aspect. I just think that's the opportunity. It's like a reverse pyramid almost, local, and growing out from there. But you couple in the niche programming, the easeability to do live streaming these days, which is a game changer as well in this process. We know that something live on our platform is going to be watched 3 times as much as something that's not. It's what people want to see. And so the ease of use and the ability of the technology to do that so easily is changed this since, when I got into the business, you had to have this huge live truck, 3 people at a site to even broadcast back to the station to get it out from somewhere. Now I'm on my phone and I'm going live across the country. And it's amazing.
Anything to add, Justin?
Not really on this topic. You know, in the absence of questions in the chat, I wanted to ask one. Is that okay with you, Rob?
Sure, go ahead.
So we keep talking about local, and this is probably more specific to Dana and Kevin, but what does local mean? Dana mentioned DMA earlier, right? And selfish sales guy thing, right? Like we target based on DMA regions with our data. So I'm just kind of curious, like Kevin, you talked about the reverse pyramid. Dana, you mentioned DMA. What does local mean to your two organizations? Is it county? Is it metro? Is it regional? Like what does that mean in your realm?
I think it means different things to different people. I think honestly, as hyper local as you can get is going to be the best for everyone. It's just having the ability to push that kind of content. You know, we have these conversations, you know, constantly about finding local providers that are county city based, you know, things like that, you know, a single university based. I mean, it depends, but I think it's defined differently by everyone. Also, their local, you know, is defined obviously, as I just stated, differently than other people. But you know, I think weather's the one that kind of tells you what's local to them, because they want to know what's happening outside their house and whether their kids are going to go to school or not.
Yeah, and I agree with Kevin in that it somewhat depends, right? There's certain things that I think are regional. Drought issues is pretty, like, a broad swath of the country has drought issues. Whereas, like I mentioned, that Basque channel, that's really specific to the Boise area. That's not going to play well in Colorado Springs, for example. So I do think it kind of depends on the content. In many instances, the more hyper local you can get is better, but not always, just because some content is interesting for a wide variety of people.
Well, it's starting to, we got about 10, 20 minutes left, and I'm running out of questions.
We got a couple in the Q&A.
I see them in there, and I know there's one of them there I'm saving just for you, Dana. I did, although I told her beforehand I'd never find that window if I had to. I did find it. So, but here's a question, maybe just for me and Kevin's opinion, and it is truly opinion based, but do you think traditional broadcasters will ever truly embrace the alternative distribution model, or are they just going to go kicking and scratching? And one of the reasons I bring that up now is because, Dana, I know your service, I looked at it, you're getting the .nets, but you don't have the other ones. So I don't understand in this trouble, because in ATSC3, and I've worked in that space and I've worked with .nets as well, I don't understand why it's fine for antenna TV to stream, but not Fox 17. You know, do you think they'll ever be embraced, and I know there's a lot of things that go into it. There's the affiliate agreements, there's the retrans, there's all this other stuff, which makes traditional broadcasting difficult in this day and age. But it's also, they've had a head start, and video isn't really easy, and that's what they're specialized in. So where's the friction besides, like I said, retrans and that?
So, I mean, I think retrans is a friction element. You know, I ran a television station for 5 years, and we knew what our retrans numbers were. But you know, there are a number of things that are going into this. It's retrans. It's also the network affiliation agreement. Those two are, you know, as that price goes up, you know, but as the OTT space, that the currency gets better, you know, and your price that you're making per viewer is the same, if not more. We have a television station on our platform that makes per viewer a month $4.50. That is a retrans number. If that continues to grow, that they're going to be forced to embrace it. But I think it comes down to the retrans, the amount of money you can make in OTT, but also we can't forget about the network agreement. If it's going to be around, it's going to have to change, because there's a ceiling there of a cost, you know, the cost to be an affiliate of a top four, and that's going to play into this. But I always say that, you know, on like a platform of ours, we can stream many things between 8 and 10 p.m. We don't have to worry about the network. We're not streaming the network programming, but we can stream local events and other things. I just think that we're early, but the early adopters, like on our platform, are doing great. They are doing great and they're making money. And so it's a great parallel play to figure out where things are going to go rather than jumping on 2 years and being too late to the party.
Yeah, I think there's and you touched on it, Kevin, that the broadcasters that aren't owned and operated by the big four are kind of getting squeezed. So they're having to pay more in their reverse retrans to their affiliate, and then they're having to raise the prices to the distributors, and they're kind of getting squeezed here. And it's a tough spot for them to be in. So they have to balance the economics of their business and what they see as the future with looking for new alternatives. But I think they're definitely open to looking at new alternatives. Maybe not every single affiliate broadcaster, but the majority of them understand that they can't keep raising the prices to distributors indefinitely forever. And on the flip side, the owners of the big four are trying to raise their reverse retrans rates pretty consistently. So they're definitely looking for new opportunities to reach viewers and monetize those viewers. But it's a lot for them to balance at the same time.
And one of the things that I've always found interesting to see if it's going to go this direction, if you get away from the big four affiliate or networks plus the stations that they own, you look at all these other stations, those aren't independent, but all the way down to the small independents, they've got, because of the repackaging, and that's not the right term, they've got all these .nets. A lot of them, they got antenna on one and they may have real TV on the other, but they still got one or two empty ones. What's to keep them? And does anybody see it becoming a trend of moving their news operation to a dot where they're not required to honor affiliate agreements, and then feeding that to services like you? Has anybody seen any kind of moves like that, or is it an intriguing possibility, or am I just needing to shut up?
I'll take a stab at it. I think it's an intriguing possibility, but I don't want to go too far out speaking for local broadcasters. That's a lot of movement. They've got many very loyal viewers that like to watch Channel X all the time. It'd be probably pretty disruptive for their business, but it could happen.
I don't think we're there yet. I think we're getting closer every day, but I don't think we're there yet. And so, but a lot of things could happen. There could be new players that come into play that work with local broadcasters beyond what we're doing and things. I just think there's a lot of variables that are wide open still.
So, any opinion, Caroline?
It's not my area, but I think path of least resistance.
I promised you no gotchas, and I gave you a gotcha.
Yeah, no, path of least resistance, right? And also, if they're savvy folks, they're going to be looking at what is happening digitally at the local level, who are like the young, crack people who are, coming out of, the tech world or, out of high school and college that are really creating cool, like local site destinations that, that have video or YouTube channels that are, again, just not born out of broadcast, but just born out of, the will and creativity, of young people who are savvy in this way. I think that's what, these local broadcasters need to look out for, is that somebody's going to eat their lunch. That's going to be the content that's going to win, when they are, they're able to, play in this really egalitarian space. Like, anyone can really get this content together, and through collaboration, even pull content from a lot of different sources to launch these channels and reach these audiences, the same audiences that these broadcasters are trying to reach. So it's more just like a bit of advice, like, look out, because this is, the same thing that happened, like to my industry and, publishing is, all these digital players came in and, and really, I think, created very cool, like sort of competition, right? You want that competition, that vibrant competitive space. And you want people in your own organization to be thinking about that and to be, to have their finger on the pulse of what's happening.
And one thing I've noticed, and as a disclaimer, everybody on the panel knows, but I spent my time with Gannett as well. But I noticed that Gannett, being traditionally a newspaper company, and now starting on the digital side, your reporters, your writers are much more natural storytellers than somebody who's working in broadcast and packaging a minute and a half every night. And so I think that gives you guys the advantage. It really doesn't have anything to do with this question, but packaging it up for what the localized content they're wanting. You know, the newspapers have been localized content since day one. They never had to pay ABC or something. So I just wanted to add that on to the end of your statement there. I think I'm going to go to this question just because I worked in the space, and Dana, you work in the space now. I did spend time working in the ATSC3 space. And, you know, the question is, do you think the ATSC OTA receivers for PCs will become popular? And then ATSC3 receiver chips and mobile handheld, which I know a little bit about as well. But my question you really is, you know, HD Home Run's already got an ATSC3, which can work with a computer. But do you think anything in that question could actually materially affect what you guys are doing? Because you've got the set-top box, and you know it's a technology that's really, the adoption is strangely slow on it. You know, it doesn't help that the TVs are $3,000-$4,000 a piece, even though I was promised a year ago when I was working in this space by now they'd be under $1,000. How does that play into what you do, and what future do you see for ATSC3?
Well, I think, first of all, I'd say I agree with you. It's been a bit slower than we would have expected as well. But our set-top box does have the ATSC3 receiver. You can rent it from us or buy it for $150. So relatively speaking, it's a lot more affordable than buying a new TV. Yeah, I think receiver chips could become common in mobile handheld devices. That's a little outside my realm in terms of the technology discussion.
I know when I was on the organization working on that, we were trying to get it into phones. I don't know what the political environment is now, but I know it was a struggle even then under a more favorable administration. So
yeah. But I think it's where broadcast is going. And if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind addressing the question right above it, which was that during the last digital changeover, the broadcasting hybrid business model failed, resulting in local affiliate broadcaster losses. How has ATSC 3.0 changed it? I think I'm not exactly sure what's meant by broadcasting hybrid business model failed. I mean, local affiliate broadcaster losses has certainly been a problem for a while with cord cutting, if you're a broadcaster anyway. But I think 3.0 gives a lot more capacity. It allows for you to encrypt signals. It allows for advanced advertising, which is significantly higher monetization of advertising. You can do some cool stuff, like we're working on interactivity, so you could watch a sporting event and you could have stat overlays, or you could actually buy merchandise right there through the TV. So I think there's a lot of stuff that 3.0 opens up, which is very closely related to an IP streaming, pretty much is IP streaming. You can do all the same cool stuff. So I hope that the 3.0 transition will enable broadcasters to monetize and reach their customers in a different way. And that goes hand in hand with all of the streaming that we've been talking about today.
And that walks really into the next kind of question for Justin, because one of the very first comments in chat was I would argue that ATSC3 is streaming. And knowing my background about working in that space and the possibilities, is IP data being used in that arena?
Heavily. Yeah, definitely. OTT. Shameless plug. We work with just about all of them. So yeah, it's highly popular, and it isn't always just the localization piece, right? There's that regulatory piece for licensing and copyright and all those wonderful things. Everybody knows somebody who's used a VPN to, when they're traveling abroad to get to Netflix and had some type of problem. We're also part of the reason why you have that, and rightly so. But I think there's more to it than that. There's the aspect of understanding who's somebody's provider, what type of device are they on, how can we increase the effectiveness of that experience just using data. And we provide as many solutions as we can for that. But yeah, it's the same. And we're starting to see growth in areas with others. You know, it doesn't have to be just OTT and streaming, but broadcasters and the like, whether it be fine tuning that localized experience with the content or protecting themselves and that content. We have solutions for all that.
Excellent. Here's one, pivoting right back to just the content we're looking at and what we're producing is, you know, for years, Hyperlocal has been portrayed as the holy grail, not only for OTT, but for websites, print, not print, but websites. And I had mentioned earlier with Caroline, you know, Gannett's always been Hyperlocal, but other people who have tried to get into the industry, they've just failed horribly. Anybody from AOL to, I mean, you could sit here and list them for the next hour, places failed. Do you think a hyperlocal organization, there's a play for it now, or does it need to be broadened out and be like what Kevin and Dana are doing, where you're hitting multiple places, or can a hyperlocal organization survive now? What do you think? Is there an appetite for it? And if there is an appetite, is there, you know, a way to, you know, pay the bills?
I would say yes and no. I mean, I think from a yes standpoint, it's a lot easier and simpler to do the things that we used to try to do. You know, it's a lot cheaper to do the things that we tried to do, but it takes commitment. And in my experience in this business, there's not a lot of people who are willing to commit the long-term play to get there. I think that's what you've got to do that. And, you know, I think, but there are niche, there we go back to that term again, niche groups that are doing it and starting that way. I think, you know, if you put out good content and it's distributed the right way, it's going to be viewed these days. It is currency. I mean, and I just think that, so I'd say it's tough, but I think yes, if done right.
John? Dana? Justin? Anybody? We're trying to fill up 2 more minutes here.
I think there's some really good stuff on YouTube where hyperlocal content goes up on YouTube, and we're kind of trying to reach out to those people and figure out a distribution platform for them. It's a little tough given our size and their expectations on monetization, but you know, there's a ton of content if you can figure out the right way. To Kevin's point, it's more economical now than it ever has been. If you can figure out a way to compile the content in the right way and get it to people, I think there's for sure a model there.
Definitely not my area, but from a consumer perspective, like the aggregation of that local content. And I think we all have apps on our phones at some point that do that. But I think that's critical. The sports side of it, the comedic side of it, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish from a content perspective, the aggregation, I think, wins out. I think Kevin's right. If folks were able to do it and commit to it and do it right, it could be done. But that aggregation makes it so easy for all of us. And I think there's further aggregation, again, on the consumer side, especially in sports. Literally, my wife tried the other night where we're displaced. We're in the state of Washington, near Seattle, and we're sports fans from other places in the country. And it's always frustrating. You pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars a year for the packages to watch your team. And the thought is, why can we not just watch sports from our state? Instead of having to pay I don't need to see the New York Jets or the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, it's not my interest. How can I have that aggregation? It be even more personalized. And maybe that starts with that bottom up pyramid that Kevin talked about earlier, right? Start with the hyperlocal. I want to see high school sports in my area. I want to know the kids that I might have coached 10 years ago and where they are and what they're doing and what schools they might go to as far as signing day or anything like that. But I think it has to grow, right? I also want to see what the Green Bay Packers are doing on Sunday. And I don't want to pay $450 to do it every year.
You know, it's interesting that we try a lot of different things because we're trying to, you know, beyond the local TV stations, give them other content offerings to keep them around. About 6 months ago, we launched just a Skycam channel. So it's maybe like 50 Skycams from across the country. And the average viewer watches it for 47 minutes. And it's just a live camera going, every 60 seconds, a different live camera from across the country. I just think there's avenues for everything. And I think that, and then from there you refine it, and push forward. We're in a wild, wild west situation, I think.
I agree. We're still early like that. And with that, hey, there's Eric. I was just going to say, hey, there's Eric.
And here I am. That was a terrific discussion.
One thing I would mention, Kevin, if you don't have the Q&A open, there's several questions in there directly at you that we don't need to do for the whole group, but there's several people talking to you.
Yeah, and we will download the questions from the audience and send them to all the panelists. So yeah, there's some questions in there that are specific to particular speakers, and that's the best way to deal with those. So thanks so much. Great discussion about a crucial topic. Thanks, Rob and Carolyn, Dana, Kevin, and Justin. I'd also like to thank our sponsors once again, Conviva, Limelight Networks, Signient, and Video Guys, and Digital Element for sponsoring this panel. And the winner of the Amazon gift card is Tim Nickerson. So Tim, keep your eye out for an email from us. And we'll be back in a little more than 30 minutes with a discussion about the future of live sports in OTT, broadcast, and pay TV. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
In this era of streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.
Videoguys.com is your source for live production gear, and we can help you start streaming today.
Reach a wider audience and tell your story using equipment like the RGB Link Mini family of 4 HDMI mixers, YOLO Live YOLO Box all-in-one touchscreen mixers, streamers, and recorders, and PTZ cameras and controllers, perfect for productions of all sizes without a large production crew.
Go to Videoguys.com or call us at 800-323-2325 for help and start streaming today.